Good morning. Okay. With the help of Hashem, we are learning ERUVIN Daf Mem Gimel. We are continuing to learn about the machlokes between Rabban Gamliel and Rabbi Yeshua regarding the ship that moved out of the Tchum after Shabbos began. And as the Mishnah quoted, quickly reviewing the basic dinim, if one leaves the Tchum, even b'shoigeg, someone was taken there against his will by Nachem or by a Ruach Ra. If you left your Tchum, rule number one is if you're out there, you only have Daled Amos. However, if you were removed and you were taken into an enclosed area, that is where we have the machlokes in the Mishnah. Rabban Gamliel was the lenient one that says that you can consider the entire enclosed area as your Daled Amos. Ubemela, by a case of a ship, you can consider the whole ship your Daled Amos and you're not restricted. You can walk around on the entire ship. Rabbi Yeshua holds that if you are removed of your Tchum, even unwillingly, even in an enclosed area, you still only have Daled Amos. Okay. Now, we have to just make a little bit of a correction of the way we were learning the Gemara. We learned it very well, but I want to come from a different direction over here. Yes, true, in the Mishnah, when the Mishnah brought the story, and the Mishnah says that Rabbi Yeshua and Rabbi Akiva, Ratsu, they wanted to be machmir on themselves, which implies that they were moida that me'ikar adin, you could move around on the entire ship. By the sugya began on Daf Mem Beis Amud Beis, that Rav paskins in all areas like Rabban Gamliel. Shmuel says no. By the din and the soyar, I don't paskin like Rabban Gamliel, but by the ship, I do paskin like Rabban Gamliel. This clearly implies that they argue even in the case of a ship, or there is a scenario where they argue even in the case of a ship. The question the Gemara began with, that was the angle, is that why is everyone agreeing that the halacha is like Rabban Gamliel by a ship? Because there must be, even in the case where they argue, there must be an additional reason why we should side with Rabban Gamliel. And we had Rabba and Abzeira, and on top of Mem Gimel, Rabba says because you took in Shabbos within the walls of the ship. I know that the ship moved outside your Tchum, but at least you began Shabbos within it. And Abzeira was the one that explained that since the ship is continuously moving, so therefore it's not shaykh to tell a person you only have Daled Amos. Okay, where are my Daled Amos? You keep on going into a new Daled Amos. So therefore you actually can walk in the whole ship, and we pass it like Rabban Gamliel. Now, why didn't one say like the other? So on top of Mem Gimel, we explained that Rabba doesn't say like Rab Zera, because you can't say that the whole reason of Rabban Gamliel is because, or why we paskin like Rabban Gamliel, is because the ship is moving, when actually says Rabba that when the ship is moving, everyone agrees that you are allowed to walk in the whole ship. And that's the way we'll explain the Mishnah. Their argument is that when the ship is stopped, is stationary. And again, we're trying to figure out why both Rav and Shmuel always paskin like Rabban Gamliel, even in the case where Rabbi Yeshua argues with Rabban Gamliel. Now, the reason of Rabbah works. No, it's even if the ship is stationary, the fact that when you took in Shabbos, I know the ship was at the port, but you were already within the walls of the ship, that gives more reason why we should paskin like Rabban Gamliel. This is where we left off. We're going to finish the sugya. And on Daf Mem Gimel, we're going to start. Really, it's a famous sugya because people quote it the whole time. They just never learned the source yet, or some people did not yet learn the source. And that is whether there are tchumen l'mayla ma'asara or whether ain't tchumen l'mayla ma'asara. Guys, we learned clearly at Rosh Hashanah and the Karmelis only goes up until 10 tefachim above the ground. How does this above 10 tefachim versus below 10 tefachim affect the dinim of tchumen? Now, guys, this has two applications. Both of them are going to be addressed indirectly in our daf. Number one, if I take in Shabbos over here, wherever we are, we all have a tchum. Even if you live in a large city, so what? But outside the city, you can only walk until 2,000 amos. If a person were to figure out how to go above the tchum and travel, one option we'll have in this daf is you're going to learn how to use one of the holy names of God to jump. And you're going to travel around the world. And then you're going to enter, you're going to descend. When you descend, no one debates, you only have 4 amas because you went beyond your tchum. In tchum l'mayla masara means is you are allowed to make that trip. Because even though you're going beyond your tchum, well, you were traveling above 10 tvachim. So that's not called traveling. Now, when you come in, you're stuck to your daladamas, but then you can jump again. You can go above 10 tvachim and bite there, keep on traveling. That's one application of what does it mean? Ein tvachim l'mayla masara. Another application will be if when Shabbos came in, you were l'mayla masara tvachim. You began Shabbos above 10 tvachim. So then you don't b'chlal have a makom shvisa. If ein tchum l'mayla masara. And then the halacha will be that if during Shabbos you descend somewhere, now you have 2,000 amas from where you descended. Now our Gemara actually is going to be speaking a lot about the coming of Elyahu Navi, before Mashiach's coming, about the coming of Mashiach. It's mashma from our Gemara that our Gemara sides with the Sugya and Sanhedrin, Tzadik Ches, Amid Beis, in Menchaya, in Menmasya. It's mashma that we are going, that Mashiach is not living. So when he's going to come, he's going to make an appearance. And him being allowed to make an appearance, he's coming from, let's say, Gan Eden, right? He's waiting on the Pesach of Gan Eden, according to some interpretations also in the Gemara and Sanhedrin. How can he come? As a haraya that ain't chumah l'mayla masara. That will be a link in the Gemara. The same question will be regarding Elyahu Hanavi's traveling. We're going to have a story that we already touched upon Bekitzer when we learned Chulin, that there was a teacher. Whenever there was some information that needed to be taught, someone taught it, whether that was Elyahu Hanavi or whether it was a character by the name of Yosef the demon. We'll see in the Gemara. Yosef the shade didn't keep Shabbos. Elyahu Hanavi keeps Shabbos. How was Elyahu Hanavi traveling on Shabbos? We'll learn from one location to a very distant location. If not, that he was traveling by going Lamaylam, Ma'asara Tvachim, and a lot in this direction. We're going to have a beautiful story of a Talmud of Rav Nachman, that because of his being engrossed in learning, he walked beyond this tchum. And again, the rule is even if you left your tchum unwillingly, you can say this is called unwillingly because it was a shogeg. But the rule is that if you are in a place in the open, l'kula alma, you only have 4 amas. They figured out a solution how to help him get back inside his tchum. And once he got back inside this tchum, he was like he was in the beginning. He can walk within his entire Tchum Shabbos. We're going to have an explanation of the final story in the Mishnah Daf Mem Aleph Amud Beis, where they were coming towards a port, and they didn't know whether they were beyond the 2,000 amas or within the 2,000 amas from the port. If when Shabbos came in, the ship was beyond 2,000 amas from the port, which means that when it came into the port, it went beyond the Tchum, then the passengers will not be allowed to disembark. But Rabbi Gamliel knew that they were already within. How did he know that? So we're going to be learning about different, Rabbi Gamliel was the one that had in the Sanhedrin, he had pictures of the moon. He had a certain type of telescope. There were no lenses then, but he made a device through which you can see exactly 2,000 amas and not further. So while he was on the ship, he was looking through that telescope and he already saw the port. So therefore he knew the port was already within 2,000 amas, and that's why he allowed everyone to disembark. Okay, let's start on Daf Mem Gimel Amud Aleph. We have 3 lines from the top of the Amid. So quickly recapping, just to make a tikkun of what we did yesterday. There is a case where Rabban Gamliel and Rabbi Yeshua argue even by a ship. That's why Rav and Shmuel need to say we pass him like Rabban Gamliel. I know the kasha is again on the Mishnah. Why did Rabbi Yeshua and Rabbi Akiva only take upon themselves a chumrah if they argue and they hold that you can't even walk more than dalad amas bisfina, so it wasn't a chumrah. So that all will fit to what Rabbi is saying. That Rabbi was the one that was megala, that when the ship is moving, everyone is maida, even Rabbi Yeshua, even Rabbi Akiva, that you're not bound to dalad amas in the ship. Where do they argue? When the ship stands. When the ship stands, you don't have the hasbara of Rav Zera. There is a machloikis. Nevertheless, Rav and Shmuel both will agree that here we pass like Rabbi Gamliel. Why? Because here, It's not stam that you are in an enclosed area, like you have in the other cases in the Mishnah, where a guy to put you into a city or he put you into a corral. No, here you were already in this enclosed area when Shabbos came in. The whole area moved. Okay. Now, that was that in the case where ship is moving, and after the ship, which was at the port when Shabbos came in, the ship only afterwards moved out, and sooner or later the ship went beyond the 2,000 amas from the Makom HaShvisa, and Rabbi Gamliel and Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah that were on the ship, Lishitasam, the Holcho Skula. It wasn't Rabbi Shua and Rabbi Akiva. Now, Rabbi Shua and Rabbi Akiva, in one scenario, they also argue with Rabbi Gamliel, and they hold that you're not allowed to walk more than 4 amas. But in the story in the Mishnah, they also, Zazu Arba Amas, not Me'ikra Din, only because Sheratzu, because they wanted to be machman on themselves. Now the Gemara says, I Amra Dishleima, like Rabba said, that the Mahaleches, Loi Pligi, Hainu Diktani, that story was the ship was moving. And therefore, Me'ikra Din, and that's based on the logic of Rab Zera, you can't tell a person you're bound to 4 amas if your 4 amas keeps on changing, if the place of your 4 amas keeps on changing because the ship is moving. Narvos then, they were machmed. Why were they machmed? Because they, argue when the ship is stationary. And the reason why they were machmed was because they said, who knows, maybe the captain of the ship in the middle of Shabbos will decide to anchor it. Dilma Amda. And if he'll suddenly stop the ship, then Rabbi Akiva Me'ikra Din will hold you cannot move more than 4 amas. So he was machmer that even when the ship was moving, he also didn't move more than 4 amas. Elyahu not pligi, even when it stopped. So Hayratzulah Ahmed, Isuruhu, beautiful. And Amar Avashi, I'll tell you more. Masnisen, before the story, the Mishnah itself also Nami Daika, that there was a case where they argue and there's a case where they agree with each other. Because since the Mishnah gave a couple of examples and we juxtapose Sfina Dumya Dir Vesahar, Madir Vesahar, where there's where Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Shua say that even if a guy took you there against your will, and you are in an enclosed corral, you can only walk 4 amas. But a dir and a sad is the kivi'i. Of the case of the Sfina, where they argue, is where it's the kivi'i. And Chevra, let's appreciate again that even though they argue in a case where the ship is stationary, it was for this that not only Rav, that always paskins like Rav Gamliel, even Shmuel, that in the other cases of Dir and Sar, paskins like Rabbi Shua and Rabbi Akiva. Here we still paskin like Rabbi Gamliel, and for that we have Rabbi. Rabbi explains the nafkamina. Rabbi Akiva argues, but the Rabbi explains why the Amoraim all sided with Rabbi Gamliel because you took in Shabbos within those rules. I want you to know that the Hilchas Ki Rabbi Gamliel B'Sfina, like Rabbi Shmuel said, and here again we are inferring that the fact that he needed to paskin by a boat, the halacha like Rabbi Gamliel is Anaya Hilchas Michlal, that they argue. Again, how do you reconcile that with the Mishnah? If they argue, then Rabbi Akiva should not have walked in the ship, Me'ikra did, not Ratzu. But again, so we just explained that. So the Gemara says, yes, they argue even by a ship. When the ship is stationary, they argue Me'ikra did. The Hotanya, that's Menichusa, that Hananya. And if you go with the parentheses, who was the nephew of Rabbi Yeshua, Ben Achi Rabbi Yeshua, Omer says that on that story in the ship, and the ship again was moving then. Omer kol oisa yom yoshvu v'danu b'dvar Allah. They were all, these 4 Tanaim were sitting in the ship, and what did they do on Shabbos? They were debating this din. And Emesh means in the evening, Hichriya achi abba, halacha kiram gamliel b'sfino. Wow. So they decided that the halacha is like Rabbi Gamliel, meaning the halacha is that even when it stopped, which is the case where they argue, we still pass in like Rabbi Gamliel. Again, the logic will be like Rabbi explained. However, the halacha, like Rabbi Akiva, will be by a dir and a sahar, that even though you were moved against your will and you are now in an enclosed area, since you are beyond your tchum, you are bound, ein lo ella, dalid amas. Okay, Chevra, here we start
Rabbi, didn't we say that the Sfina and the Divasar is the same because it's Kaviyah? I mean, how did it suddenly change?
Like this, Tzvika. When the Kaviyah means that they argue in the case where the ship stopped. That's how they are the same. But there's still a difference. What's the difference? A lot of why we pass like Rabbi Gamliel. If I take in Shabbos here, and a goy or my madness takes me into a dir, which is beyond my tchum, I did not take in Shabbos in that dir. Even though I didn't take in Shabbos in dir. Which is why Rabbi Kiva says that ein lo yelad aladamas. But when I take in Shabbos in a boat, even though the boat left the tchum, but at least I am still in the same enclosed area as I was when Shabbos came in. Even if the ship stopped. I'm in the same, which is why there's more logic to paskin like Rabbi Gamliel. But Rabbi Kiva disagrees. He says that since they're both stationary, okay. So as we spoke out on the intro, this is the sugya. Yesh tchum l'mayla ma'asara, ein tchum l'mayla ma'asara. There are two nafkaminas again. Ein tchum l'mayla ma'asara will mean that when you're taking Shabbos in your location, you are lechatchila allowed, if you figure out how to go above 10 tvachim and travel for as far as you want, you will be lechatchila allowed to do it. Even though when you re-enter planet Earth, when you come, it's not planet Earth, when you come under 10 tvachim, you'll only have daladamas. No one debates that. But you will be allowed to continuously travel because then in your daladamas, you go above 10 tvachim and you'll like to travel. Or another application is that if when Shabbos came in, you were already Lamayla Masara, then whenever it is that you enter Lamata Masara during Shabbos, now you have 2,000 amas from wherever you are. Says the Gemara Boyer of Hananya. And here we're going to qualify his inquiry. If you have an Amud Gevaya Sara V'Rochavar Ba'am, you taking Shabbos in a Makim Shvisa, guys, go to the boundary of your tchum. Go to Amma 1999. If over there is a pillar that is a hush of a place, right? 10 tvachim, wide at least 4. If the question is, well, can I go on top of the pillar and walk from within 2,000 on top of the pillar? The pillar itself is within my tchum and without my tchum, beyond the tchum, and go beyond it. If that's the kasha, for sure not. Even if ain't tchum l'mayla masara loy tibayalach, that it's prohibited, because since the aros semichtahi, since the pillar is on the ground, we view as far as this question is concerned. You're on a mountain, you're on a mound. You can't say, well, the mountain here is 10 tvachim higher where I took him Shabbos. No. It's all part of the earth. You're standing on the earth. You're considered for this question lamata masara. Where do we have an application of this question? For example, if there is some sort of a platform that is 10 tvachim tall, it's very long. Some of it is within your tchum, some of it is beyond your tchum. However, since it's not the Rachav Arba'ah, and therefore for many other Hilchah Shabbos, it's not called a chash of a place. Number one, am I allowed, for whatever reason, to go on top of this amud and walk from Amma 1999, walk a couple of Ammas on top of the Amud? That will be one application that if you say, Ein Tchum L'mayla Masara, then I'll be allowed to do that. Even though when I come down the Amud, I'll be stuck to Dalad Ammas. Doesn't matter, but I will be allowed to go. Inami, another nafkamina, and now again, it's the whole daf is as a pikabala daf. Is the ka'azal b'kfitza. Says Rashi, 8 lines before the bottom of the Amid, b'kfitza b'shem. Some people know how to use a shem kodesh. Here it's called jumping. Jumping means that they give a jump up and they go to wherever they want to go. You can call this kfitza saderech, but they're going in ba'oifen that they are lamayla masara. Lamayla masara doesn't mean above 10, it's 10 and above. They're not lamata masara tvachim. If that would be if ain't tchum lamayla masara, then you can travel Shabbos al pi kfitz. Lishnachrino, another version of the application of the question, if yesh tchum lamayla or ain't tchum lamayla. This is great. Don't get mystical over here. The seabed is for sure 10 tvachim or more under the ship. The whole sugya that we're learning is, are you on a ship and the ship went? Now again, guys, when you make a new entry, that's why it's important to remember. Even if you say that ein tchumen l'mayla masada, which means that you can lechatchila maybe go on a ship. The ship is here. I took in Shabbos here. How can I allow myself to stay on the ship when the ship goes out? I'm going in on my tchum. No, ein tchumen l'mayla masada. Still, when I dock, I'll be stuck to Daladamas. Maybe let Rab Gamliel, I'll still be allowed to walk in the ship, but I won't be able to walk out of the ship. And Chanami. But that's the best application. Because a ship is normally above 10 tfachim off the ground. And so Amar Rabbi Shia, we're going to try to resolve this inquiry. Tashema, quoting from our Mishnah, Maisa Shabo, Mipalanderisin, Nifligis Vinasabayam, and the Amrat Bishlemi Yesh Tchumen, if Yesh Tchumen Lamayla Masara, which means that they traveled Shaloi Kedin. And not only that, but the ship is considered still like it is on the ground. That's why Ratzu, that's why they were Machmir. But if not for their Chumrah, again, Rabbi Akiva would have walked in the ship. Elyahu ain't Chumen, at least he was Machmir, like we mentioned. He was Machmir because if the ship will stop, then it'll be Yasser. But if ain't Chumen, why was he even Machmir? Oh, that's the kasha. It doesn't apply b'chlal to a ship. And if the ship stopped, like you can't walk and you're walking l'mayla masara. So the Gemara says, oh, that's not a proof. Because just like Rava said elsewhere, the elsewhere will be just in a few lines, that the case is perhaps only b'mahalechas b'rekak, that the ship is traveling in a very, very shallow water. And yes, the ship is within 10 tfachim off the ground. So maybe here also, in the days of old, the ships were not the big ships that you're thinking about, and they used to turn over a lot. B'chala was very advantageous for the ship to always travel relatively close to the shore, and certain waters don't get deep until way out there. Now we're going to learn, so therefore there's no raya, and now we're going to learn exactly where Rava said his opinion on. Tashema again from our Mishnah. This is the final case in the Mishnah. Right, the Mishnah on Daf Memel. People, Yidden were on a ship. They thought they're going to dock before Shabbos, but they didn't. They were still on the trip while it was moving before Shabbos came in, but near Shabbos. When it docked in the port, right, they wanted to know whether they can disembark or not. Again, then you understand what their concern was. Because if the ship, when Shabbos came in, was more than 2,000 amas away from the port, then Taka, they would not be allowed to disembark. But if there's no issue with traveling l'mayla masara, who cares? So, like we mentioned, if the second application of ein tchumen l'mayla masara, if when Shabbos came in, you were already l'mayla masara, then you're not down to any tchum. And whenever you enter down into this world, whenever you go into Lamata Masara during Shabbos, now you get to make a new tchum. So why a new tchum is 2,000 amos, you can disembark the ship. So Amar Rava, the reason why this does not prove to our inquiry is because perhaps the story of Rabbi Gamliel is, yeah, they were taka far away from docking. They were not there. Even they were maybe more than 2,000 amos away from the Nomal, but the waters there were already very shallow. And therefore, if not for Rabbi Gamliel confirming that we were within the 2,000 amas, well, then they traveled 2,000 amas lamata masada. That's for sure. Yeah, you're bound by the rules and the restrictions of the Tchum. So again, no resolution. Tashma, another attempted proof. Here we're going to try to prove that Tchumen does not apply to Lamaila. Hani Shef Shmaitza. Remember Shef Shmaitza, just to know, the author of the Ktsois, right, Harab Aryeh Leib HaKohen Heller, he's most famous for the Ktsois, but he also wrote the Avnei Miloyim. This is a sefer that we learned a lot, and then he wrote the Shef Shmaitza, just to know where he borrowed the name for his sefer was from this story. Now this story, if you remember on Chulin Daf Mem Beis Amud Beis, we were learning 7 halachas regarding treifus that were taught. And there was an incident where some being came on Shabbos to 2 different locations at 2 different times. And they gave over these 7 halachas that obviously the people there maybe were not so clear in. So the story was the 7 teachings regarding Trefus. These Amram that were taught, that were given over in the morning, B'tzafra, B'shapsam, in the Shabbos morning, Kamei de Rab Chizda, in Surah. And that same Shabbos, Bahadi Panya B'shapsa, Shabbos afternoon, it was taught in front of Rava, or the Messiah Sasha says in front of Rava, in the city of Pompadisa, Surah and Pompadisa, way beyond the Tchum from the other. So that means that there was that whoever it was that taught it traveled from one location to the other. So Man Amrino, who was able to travel like that? It must have been Elyahu Amrino. And Elyahu Navi, it's like Kfitza B'Shem. He knows how to travel a mile Masada. He can be here and he can just appear over there. But who allowed him to travel? So Alma we see ain't Tchum L'Mayla Masada. Because if he ain't Tchum L'Mayla Masada, then how would Elyahu Navi be allowed to travel from one location to the other? Now, just Lahoyer, people quote a lot of Chassam Sofer. He speaks about another issue. He's addressing that if we're going to go with that tzad, so how can we say B'chal Tishbi, Yetaras Kushas Yabois, Toidalav Hashemayim? So his nakuda is that Elyahu Navi sometimes appears as an neshama without a guf, and sometimes he is an neshama big guf. Whenever he comes down embodied, and he teaches Torah, it's no longer Bashamayim. When do we say Torah la Bashamayim? If it's being taught by a heavenly being, if it's heard in Gan Eden, or even if his neshama comes down, if it's not embodied, then we can't paskin in, and with whatever the restrictions are, it's not everything. It's the Isa Beheter. It could be about the Mitzvahs v'chulik. So just to make it clear that Elyahu Navi, for example, that it comes to every seder, doesn't bother us. That doesn't prove anything regarding Tchum L'Mayla Masar or not, because if he's not embodied, that's not the issue. But here in this story, no, a person, he was embodied. He taught in Surah, he taught in Pompadisa, now he's bound, now he's already an earthly being like us, which is like why he can tish v'yataretz. But how did he travel? Is the haraya, means even when he's embodied, he knows how to travel a mile of masar. Isn't that a proof that ain't chomin? Or says no, that we have another character that travels to teach halachais, and he was known by Chazal as Yosef the demon, Dilma Yosef Shida Amrino. And how does that answer our question? Look inside the last line in Rashi. So Rashi Dolay Mintra Shapsa. Yosef the demon, he was a big Rosh Hashiva. He was teaching. Shabbos he didn't keep. So by the fact that he traveled, it didn't bother us. Now maybe he was a demon, so he was not mechuyev to teach, because if he was mechuyev to teach, we know that Rav Meir was the one that it was a Talmud of Acher, but that was unique to Rav Meir, right? Take the good and throw out the bad. Lav Dafka, if he was bound and he was a Machalal Shabbos halachically, Lav Dafka, they would allow him to give a shir in Surah and Pompadisa, even if he knows halachis that they needed to know. But be that as it may, a Gavaldike Elyahu Navi can be the conduit for these halachis, or you can have the Yosef the demon. Yes, Dan.
Rabbi, how they know it was the same guy in both spaces? Because obviously nobody else was in both places.
Later they met.
They described him. He looked like like the other guy.
That was him. Elyahu Navi. We know what he looks like. All right. So now, weiter. So we don't have an answer. Another attempted proof. And here we're going to try to prove that Chumen, yes, applies to Ma'ila Masad. And listen, we're going from good to better. It's always from good to better, but here it's mamish, even in Das Tachan, it's Azay Geshmak. So like this, listen to this Braisa. A person makes a vow, Hareini Nazir b'yoyim sheben David ba. I am a Nazir on the day that Mashiach comes, meaning that if Mashiach appears during the day, right, today we're learning this on a Tuesday, then retroactively from the beginning of Halachic Tuesday, I'm already a Nazir. Which means, how can this person ever, right, the 3 restrictions of a Nazir is that he cannot be Mekama himself Lemeis, he cannot cut his hair, and he cannot consume or derive benefit from any grape product. So hold on, can this person ever drink wine? You would argue never, because even though Mashiach is not here at this moment, again, Hareini Nazir Biyoim Sheben David Ba means it goes retroactive to the beginning of the day. Nevertheless, as the Braisa, Mutter l'shtes yayin b'shabbasis u'b'yomim tovim. Oy gewalt. which means we are now somehow presuming that Mashiach in our sugya cannot arrive on Shabbos and on Yom Tov. Daf Mem Gimel Amud Beis. However, and therefore, since we know he won't arrive that day, you have nothing to worry about. Nervous then on top of the Amid, why can't you drink wine? Says Rashi, because maybe he'll come. Even if he's not here this moment, he might come in next moment. And again, then the vow will go back retroactively to the beginning of the day. Now asks the Gemara, why can't Mashiach come on Shabbos and on Yom Tov? And there is a premise in our sugya, right? We spoke this out in the intro. First of all, you have two, it can be linked to one of the two, either to Daf Tzadik Chesam and Beis and Sanhedrin, that the Gemara is questioning whether Mashiach is coming from the living, in Min Chaya, in Min Masya. And if he's coming Min Masya, then his arrival is a trip. Oh, another thing, if Mashiach, there's another question in Sanhedrin, more Yadua, whether Mashiach is going to come, right, Ani Roichav al Hamar, or he's going to come on the riding on the clouds. Zachu loy zachu. If there's going to be zachu, there's also going to be some miracles of the way he travels, right? He's going on that. He's going to be riding on the clouds. So if you're going to say yesh tchumen, that you are restricted, the laws of tchumen also go l'maylam. So he can't travel. He can't arrive. You are allowed to drink wine because the Mashiach can't come. There's no restrictions of Tchumen L'mayla Masada, then the Shabbosis will be Yamam Tovim. What's impeding Mashiach's arrival? Am I mutter? Answers the Gemara, I'll tell you what. I will say that ain't Tchumen L'mayla Masada. The problem is, Shani Hassan, since we're quoting the Pasuk in Malachi, Hine Anochi Sholech Lachem Es Eliyah, just a note, doesn't say Elyahu, which is why we learned that Rambam and Hilchos Malachim and the last Periscope Beis and Halacha Beis, that Rambam brings two opinions. Lav Dafka, Eliyahu Hanavi will be the one coming a day before Mashiach comes. That Rambam writes that as a yesh min hachachamim sho'oimnim, right? Shekodim bi'as HaMashiach yavei Eliyahu. Then Rambam writes the other opinion that at some time before the arrival of Mashiach, there'll be a Navi, Rambam writes, that's going to come to be mavaseh the Geula, Psuras HaGeula. But anyways, our Gemara is going with those from the Chachamim who understand that one day before the arrival of Mashiach, Eliyahu Hanavi will arrive. Now, so why is this person allowed to drink wine on Shabbos and on Yom Tov? Because since one day prior, Eliyahu Navi has to arrive, since we never heard Eliyahu Navi came yesterday on Friday, so if Eliyahu Navi did not come yesterday, so Mashiach cannot come today. So the Gemara says if that's the reason, then he should be allowed to drink wine every single day, right? He made a vow at any nazir b'yom sheben david ba. Also, call yom v'yom nami lishterei, because he can argue the holy yos eliyom yesmo. But why can he not argue that? We're going to say what you think you would know when Eliyahu Navi came. Maybe he did come yesterday, but he came to the Beis Din Hagadolos, whatever that means. Don't forget, the Beis Din Hagadol, after the Churban Habayis, Taka didn't disband when it left the Harabayis. It went into 10 Goliusin, but ultimately in Tiberia, that's the last time it convened. And that was in the times of the Tanoim. So whatever it means to the Beis Din Hagadol, maybe you'll only have to come to them and you won't know about it. So now we're back to the question. So means if you are discounting that the problem with Mashiach's arrival on Shabbos and Yom Tov, it's not because he's Tchumen L'mayla Masada, no, ain't Tchumen L'mayla Masada. So why not? Because yesterday, so that's not unique to Shabbos and Yom Tov. So the Gemara says, no, we're going to say that ain't Tchumen L'mayla Masada. Nervous then, why are we certain that Mashiach is not going to come on Shabbos and on Yom Tov? Because Eliyahu Navi has to come the day prior. And I know only by Friday and by Erev Yom Tov that Eliyahu Navi did not come on those days. Nothing to do with Tchumen. Says the Gemara, Kvar Muftach Lahem LiYisrael, She'ein Eliyahu Ba, Loi Be'arvei Shabbosos, Loi Be'arvei Yomim Tovim, Mipnei HaTorah. Rashi, 2 lines from the top of the Amid. Shemanichem Tzorchei Shabbos V'rochel L'havgel Panav. When he's going to arrive, people are going to have to be makal upon him. You are busy preparing food for Shabbos and Yom Tov. It's going to disturb your hachanas for Shabbos and Yom Tov. Oy Gaval. So the Navi doesn't want to come. He's not going to be received properly. Says the Gemara, hold on. the next question is based on the Havamin, on the premise that since Elyahu Navi will not come Erev Shabbos and Yom Tov, so Mashiach also, not to be Toreach the Olam, getting ready for Shabbos, Nami Liyasa, the Mali Shabbos, he won't, Nami Liyasa Kama, he won't come Erev Shabbos and Yom Tov. So now the kasha is, why does the Braisa only allow this person to drink wine on Shabbos and on Yom Tov? The Mila Shapsa, also Lishterei. A person should be allowed to drink wine on Erev Shabbos and on Erev Yom Tov. You can make a l'chaim already before. But why is that? Because Mashiach won't come that day, says the Gemara, no. Elyahu loyas, on Erev Shabbos or Erev Yom Tov. Mepnei HaTorah. Mashiach, yes, could come on Erev Shabbos and Yom Tov. It's a Torah? No, says the Gemara. Kiven da'asim Mashiach. When Mashiach comes right away, that's the Zachu. It's coming flying in. So right away, miracles will begin to happen. And then one of them will be that Hakoil Avadim Hein Li Yisrael. Says Rashi, and therefore Ve'ein Li Yisrael Toirach, because the Ika the Torach Lahu. Mashiach's coming will bring with all the help. That's not going to be considered a Tichel Lahep. Okay. So far we could not prove anything from this Braisa regarding our boya if yesh tchum l'mayla or ain't tchum l'mayla. But before we close up, now that we quoted this Braisa, so we explained why on Shabbos you can drink wine. However, the next kasha is the chad b'shabba lishteri. Again, based on the premise, that's this Tanach, that the pasuk in Malachi means kipshuta, that Elyahu Hanavi is coming one day before. And we just said that Elyahu Hanavi, why don't we say now, again for the Tchumen, if Elyahu Navi is not allowed to come on Shabbos because he's coming l'mayla masara tvachim, but yesh tchumen, so then he can't come on Shabbos. If he cannot come on Shabbos, if yesh tchumen, then you should be allowed to drink wine on Sunday, because Mashiach cannot come on Sunday if Elyahu Navi cannot come one day prior. By the fact that we don't allow you to drink wine on Sunday, that means we're saying that Elyahu Navi could come on Shabbos. If he can come on Shabbos, is aray, but ain't tchumen l'mayla. Weiter aray. B'chad b'shabsa lishteri and lishteri mina, they ain't tchumen because the is tchumen. Then b'chad b'shabba, yes, lishteri because the Eliyahu b'Shabbos. So why don't we prove it from this Braisa? Says the Gemara. I will tell you. Hi Tana, there has to be a suffix involved, but it's not a vaday. Sapuke misapkele yesh tchumen or ain't tchumen. And therefore, because of the suffix, maybe he could come on Shabbos. If you say ein tchumen l'mayla masor. And therefore, since he could come on Shabbos, you have to be machmir on Sunday, not to drink wine. You never heard him coming on Shabbos? Who says you'll know about it? You're welcome. And now we're going to just clarify exactly where is the Braisa speaking about. The koi aim is the konah, that exactly what day of the week did this person make a neder? Let's also understand that. If a person makes a neder, I'll say on Sunday. What did this Braisa say? This Braisa says that aside of on Shabbos and on Yom Tov, the neder is chal. Why is the neder chal? Because maybe Mashiach is coming today. Guys, maybe Mashiach is coming today. If he makes a neder on Friday, maybe Mashiach came on Friday and you don't know about it yet. So how can you B'chlal say that he can drink wine on Shabbos and on Yom Tov? Why? Once, at least we have to say maybe the neder was chal. How can it just go away because it's Shabbos? Mashiach cannot arrive on Shabbos because Elyahu Navi cannot arrive on Friday. But maybe Elyahu Navi came on Thursday and Mashiach came on Shabbos and you don't know about it yet, and it should be Yosef. Especially now that we said that if it's a suffix in din, you have to be machmir. Avade, if it's a suffix in mitzias. If this vow was said in any weekday, it won't work. Because even the chal leon nazir chal, meaning maybe it was taka chal, you just don't know about it. So hechias yishabsa o mafkalei. And it must be that the only case of the Braisa that says that you can drink wine on Shabbos and on Yom Tov is that you made the vow on Shabbos. Or you were standing on Yom Tov. So the Braisa is saying that on that day you can still drink. Because of the rule, we already said that muftach lehem liyisrael she'ein Aliyah hanavi ba by loy ba'avish shabbos loy ba'armiyam tovim. The shorelei but mikan ve'elech. Once you go into the next week, not only Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday may you not drink. Even Shabbos you may not drink. Okay. Now this is
Rabbi, is the point that Mashiach can arrive and we wouldn't know about it. That's basically what it's telling us, right?
clearly what it's telling us. It's so ironic because this whole Gemara is premised on Mashiach's arrival breaking the Tchum. That's either because he's min masya, or even if he's min chaya, it's some miracle. Why would he have to break the Tchum? The whole premise is on a miraculous arrival. A miraculous arrival, you would think that if it's Zachu and it's miraculous or it's min masya, everyone will know about it. No, lav dafka. Okay. Right. The last case in the Mishnah Daf Memalafim and days was, again, we were in the ship during Shabbos. Everyone traveled on ships. When you traveled in the days of old are not that long ago. My father traveled from Brazil to Yeshiva by the Rebbe on a ship. Took him 3 weeks to get there. So 3 weeks you traveled over Shabbos. Okay, you have to, with all the dinim, the Reif people have to be goyim. I mean, there are many halachas you have to know. And if the ship does dock, that's the whole issue. You may not disembark. Okay. Until it was dark. We thought we're getting there before dark, but we got there after dark. We didn't know whether the ship was beyond the Tchum or not. And Gamliel says, no, I know that the ship was already within the Tchum, and therefore there's no issue. You can disembark. Tana, we learned, how did he know? Zakte Braisa, Shifay Feres. Sheres means a tube. A tube is what we would call a telescope. There were no lenses then. But guys, a telescope, if you have a skinny tube, it limits your vision. Not only does it limit it in the width, it limits it in the length, in the distance. He made a Shifay Feres that when you look through it, you would see only exactly until 2,000 amos. He made that device in order to know where the Tchum is for these scenarios. Shifay Feres, how did he make it? You have to make it, you have to experiment. So you can't experiment 2,000 amos on the sea. How would you know that? He made the Shifay Feres for land use first. By land use, yeah, you can use ropes, you can measure. You can have a person standing 1,900 amos, 2,000 amos, 2,005 amos, and you can make this telescope, the oifen, that you can see all the people within 2,000 amos. You can't see anyone beyond 2,000 amos. Now you know that this works for a distance of 2,000 amos, and then he used that device in the sea. So when he was coming onto a port, he would stand with that by the edge of the ship. If he can see the port, before it became halachic Shabbos, I'm already within the Tchum. Connect alpine bayam. And similarly, it's like an eighth of Teiva Kamashval on this Bryce. It's a fascinating Bryce. It's just good advice. But sometimes, if you have a very deep hole, and you want to know how deep it is, in those days with their technology, it will be very difficult to go in there and to measure. But use the same concept. First, use a device to give you the distance on flat land, which is very easy. And then look down into a valley, and you'll know that if on the flat land you can see 2,000 amos ahead. So if you're looking down, you'll be able to determine the depth, because it will be what difference will there be. If you want to know how deep is a valley, so bring the Shifay Feres and first test it by using its range on flat land, which is the easiest way to come to the right measurement, where you can walk there without having to go down and go up. And then, and now that we're giving these pieces of advice, another piece of advice. There's a date palm. For whatever reason, you want to know how tall it is. So again, go up, climb up the date palm and measure it with ropes or with a measuring stick. There's a simpler solution. What's the simpler solution? Stand next to the date palm and look, you measure your height. Much easier to measure your height than to measure the height of a tall tree. At this moment of the day, see how far your shadow is going. So let's say a person measures to 6 feet, and at this moment, his shadow measures 12 feet, which means the shadow, the ratio is double than his height. Now, simple. Stand next to the tree, and right away measure the length of the shadow of the tree. In this case, then the tree will be exactly half of it. Measure your height, which is easy, and measure now your shadow, which is on the ground. Now you know the ratio. And now, measure your shadow and your height. I'm sorry, measure your height. Measure your shadow. Measure of the tree. Measure the shadow of the tree. And v'yeda, right? That's the Geivra, Kama Goyva Shaldekel. You'll just simply, you'll just apply the same ratio height to shadow. Another Eitzah Tova, if you have a grave and there's a mound, and we are afraid certain chayes, ra'os, are meat eaters. And what's the fear? That in those days, that right after the burial, before the body decomposed, how are we to guarantee that a chaya ra'ah won't dig open the grave and eat up the physical remains? Now, why would a chaya ra'ah be over there? Because they, chayes, ra'os, when it gets hot, they rest in a shady place. So we have to make sure that especially during the important times where the chayes decide where they will hide in the shade, we don't want for the shade to be right on top of the caver or right near the caver. Because if they're going to hang out there for the shade, that's when they can smell the mace, and God forbid, the mavaza go and eat up the remains. So make sure that a chayera won't rest in the shade. How will you determine that? So he says like this. Right, before you make the grave, when you make the graves, then on top of the ground, there was like a mound. So first, noyetz kana, take a reed which will have the same height as your projected height of the mound or your projected height of the large, like you have in Eretz Yisrael, on top of the ground, you have this big stone tomb, right? So put a kana in, so you know the height. But this is the chachma. Put it in the 4th hour of the day. The 4th hour of the day is the time of the day where the difference in temperature between in the shade versus in the sun is the greatest difference. That's the ikar time that chayes are looking, it's too hot in the sun, but let me chaparang in the shade. After the 4th hour in the day, even though in the afternoon, the shade will go to the opposite direction. By then, first of all, chayes already decided where they're resting. And more than that, the difference in the afternoon between shade and sun is not as much as in the 4th hour of the day. And the see where the shade of the reed is going. And now you want to make sure that if you build a cave here, build it in a way that the shade will not go there, it will go in the opposite direction. Because the ikir time that the chayes will determine where they will rest in the shade is in the beginning of the 4th hour of the day. Now we conclude with a story. Nehemiah, the son of Rav Chani Loi, he was on Shabbos very much partifed, engrossed in his learning. And because of him living in his mind, he inadvertently walked beyond the tchum. Mishachte Shmaitza, he was drawn by his learning. And v'nafak chutz l'tchum. Now we consider this a person who did not leave b'mezid. Right? This is such a great L'umazeh of the cases in the Mishnah was a goy took you unwillingly, or a person, God forbid, had a moment of temporary insanity, mental illness, he was unable to control what he was doing. No, here he was engrossed in his learning, but it's the same concept that b'shoigeg he left his tchum. Now, what did we learn in the Mishnah? Even if you went out against your will, you're stuck in daladamas. But we also learned in the Mishnah, if the goy brought you back, then you're good again. So he now, imagine you're out there, and you can't move more than daladamas. So Amal lay Rav Chizda with Rav Nachman. Rav Chizda came running to his teacher Rav Nachman, and he tells him, Herzachai, Nehemiah Talmidach, Shari Mitzar. Rav Chizda didn't know a solution. He was hoping that Rav Nachman will find a solution, and Rav Nachman knew a solution. So Amal lay, so Rav Nachman tells Rav Chizda, I'll tell you what to do. There were enough chevra that he didn't walk that far beyond the tchum. Make a encircled area around the Talmud, who's stuck in his daladamas, stuck halachically, and they are going to come either into the original tchum, or as we'll see soon, near the original tchum. Once you are now in an enclosed area, what did we learn in the Mishnah, my friends? Not Rabbi Shor Rabbi Akiva. Dir Sar, Rabbi Gamaliel says that if you are out your tchum, but you are in an enclosed area, you can walk in the enclosed area, the heter. So he's going to walk within the enclosed area of the ikones, and he'll re-enter his original tchum. And once he re-entered, he's good to go. That's a great option. It's such a great option, and it should be so obvious that the Gemara doesn't understand why didn't Rav Chizda know it himself. So all of that happened in the presence of other onlookers. So during that question and answer, Yosef Rav Nachman by Yitzchak behind Rava, and the Yosef Rava in front of Rav Nachman. These two Amirayim, Rav Nachman by Yitzchak and Rava, overheard the back and forth. So Amalei Rav Yitzchak to Rava, I don't understand. Michael Mebele Rav Chizda. What exactly? Rav Chizda obviously needed to consult with Rav Nachman because he had a doubt. What was his doubt? And we're giving two options. Is the doubt Ilema b'Gamalu Gavri Askinon that there were enough Talmidim to make a physical new Geder around Nehemiah, and they would enter the original Tchum? That's how many they were, so they can fill up. They can fill up that area now. So what was the doubt? Why didn't Rav Chizda answer? Because don't forget, according to Rabbi Akiva, according to Rabbi Yeshua, not only by the Sfina, even by a seed, even by a enclosed area, by a dir and asad, you only may walk dalad namas. And if that would be the case, then it wouldn't be a solution. So since he did not know whom the halach is like, he needed to consult with Rav Nachman. That's option number one. Or did the way Malu Gavre asking? He knew we passed him like Rabbi Gamliel. He knew that. Yeah, the problem was that you didn't have enough people to enclose an area that would go from where Nehemiah was into the old Tchum. But you know what? You would get very near to the old Tchum, to his Tchum. What does very near mean? 2 amas away. Now we're going to learn later a Tana, Rabbi Eliezer, that holds that once you come within 2 amas, it's already as if you re-entered your area. So we know we pass like Rabbi Gamliel. He can walk within this circle of people that are making a enclosure, but it didn't go all the way back into the Tchum. And the question was, halachi ken Eliezer, enoch ken Eliezer. So that was the question that Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak asked Rava. What was Rav Chizda's doubt for which he himself didn't pass and he needed to consult with Rav Nachman? So the Gemara says, Pshita, b'dolei malu gavrei askinon. And indeed the question was, Eliezer Shamuti, we don't know whether we pass like him or not, because the Isak Abaytach with the malu gavrei askinon, then mighty boile, he wouldn't even ask Rav Nachman as we began with today's shiur Hazaning. We had a daf and a half ago on daf mem Bezel and Beis. Rav, even Rav. Right, Rav says, not even Rav, Shmuel didn't say that way, but Rav said that way. And we would follow Rav Chizda, right? Rav Chizda, Rav Huna, Rav, he was in Surah. Elavadai, Bezaloi, Malu Gavri Yaskina, the Rabbi Eliezer Kami Boyle. And the Gemara says, Daikanami, because the Ka'amar lay the words of Rav Nachman, if you analyze it, Rav Nachman said to him that Aseloi Mechitza Shal B'nei Yadam. And then he says, and then the Yikonis, if the Mechitza, if the circle of Chevra, that they will go around Nehemiah, all these people were not bound, obviously, to Nehemiah's Tchum. So they were allowed to go further. If that would already be one top of the circle would be where Nehemiah is, and the other one would be inside the Tchum, he's already in the Tchum. According to Rabbi Gamliel, he's already inside. The Yikonis implies, and let him enter, is that even if he would go from one end to the other, he would still not be within his Tchum. Elama, since he's 2 amas, he passed him like Rabbi Eliezer. Why did he say it? The Gamliel Yikonis, my Yikonis, loud with the law Mechitza. That attack of the final few steps, the final 2 steps, that's what we learned. The average step is 1 amma, was beyond their Mechitza, and therefore that was the doubt, and that was the psak, that here we can be lenient like Rav Nachman, Mayidin Chalev, to be continued. What a daf.
Rabbi, great daf. Quick question. At the end we said Lamaskana that there's a possibility that the Nazir is not going to know if Mashiach came or not. But then beforehand he says we for sure will know because the Goyim are going to be the Avadim, so it kind of contradicts each other, no?
Yes, it does. That's a good question. If the Goyim are going to be our Avadim,
no, they'll only be the Avadim once they know.
Before you'll find out that Mashiach came, even if Mashiach came already, you don't know, the Goyim don't know. But the moment people find out, just like that, they'll have more hired hands. Maybe they'll become our Avadim when you find out.
Rabbi.
Yes.
This last case that we said, for sure there weren't enough people.
Yeah.
And therefore they had to pass like Rabbi Eliezer, who's giving him an extra 2 amas to move. That's what we're saying?
Yes.
So what's the scenario? You have a city, the Tchum starts From the end of the city.
This guy walked out 10 amas from his tchum. That's all it was. And he was walking with other colleagues who were not bound by that tchum. Maybe they made a native tchumen, let's say. Whatever it is, they had no problem going to Nechemia. Nechemia chat, I'm not allowed to be here. Once you leave your tchum, he's stuck.
Okay, so what's the actual way they get him back in if they don't have? What's the actual way they would get him back in according to Rebbe Eliezer?
According to everyone, is that if you can make a circle around him and hold hands, that makes a halachic mechitza.
Okay.
Creating the mechitza. So now on one, they're around Nechemia, and some other end of this circle, he's closer to his tchum. There were enough people to bring him within 2 amos of the tchum. That we pass like Rabbi Gamliel that he can walk in there is not a doubt. The chiddush is you can even walk now 2 amos without this new enclosement. That means that the people that are making the mechitza cannot walk. A walking mechitza is not a mechitza. They have to be stationary. Okay, guys, sleep.